Hey friends, welcome back, and before we jump into this tutorial, I want to thank The Coldest Water for partnering with me to make this video. The Coldest Water makes these awesome water bottles. They keep your water cold for over 36 hours, and it's so convenient. This is like the best water bottle I've ever owned. I've been using it for the past couple weeks, and it's keeping me hydrated when I make tutorials like this one. But yeah, if you guys are interested in getting your own water bottle, check the link in the description and use promo code BOICE to get 10% off your entire order. Highly recommend these, and thank you so much. But yeah, let's jump into the video. Hey friends, welcome back to the Dragonite tutorial, and this is the last part of the tutorial. Really excited, and we have a lot to cover today. We are going to be working on shaping out the legs as well as the arms, and also talking about final shaping. So lots to be excited for, and I am really excited to complete the Dragonite tutorial so you guys can finish your folds. And if you are following along with this, definitely tag me in your folds. It's a great accomplishment if you made it through all these videos. So yeah, definitely props to you, and let's get into this tutorial. Alright, so let's start off with the arms, and let's take a look at this arm. We kind of have already completed the sword arm. Everything's basically folded in. But on this arm, we don't quite have that yet, but we have our fingers in place and the spread squashes here. So we can take a look at the completed one just to kind of get an idea of what we're going for. And you don't have to exactly pose it like this, but what we want is kind of a dedicated elbow joint as well as a wrist. And this is very much up to you. You guys don't have to do it exactly the same. But you can see how I really tried to make the arm round. It's not flat. And even in the back, it's like opened up and concave so that you guys can add some three-dimensionality there. In addition to that, we have just small details using these spread squashes right along the wrist guard, like that. And those are pretty easy. So let's fold some of that in, and we'll keep going, and I'll explain maybe some ideas for you guys to do. Again, a lot of the shaping I want you guys to, kind of explore for yourselves. But let's start off with the hand. So we have kind of an issue here where this flap hangs over the rest of the fingers. Now that's easily solvable if we just valley fold along this line right here, and we get kind of a concave right here, and we have our fingers like this. So this is where we kind of want to determine our wrist joint. Right here, and I'm not going to really fold anything yet, but basically along this first triangle is going to be where our wrist is. And I guess what we can do for now is just fold in a simple rabbit ear. So right along that line as a reference, we can just free fold in a rabbit ear, and that will give us our hand joint like this. Like that. And now what we have room for is this whole two flaps to basically be our wrist and our arm, and it can be three-dimensional because we have the space to curl it around kind of like that. And so I'll get more into that in a little bit, but before we commit to that, let's fold in some of the other details. So at least on the arm guard, I want to make it look a little bit different than the top of the arm. So very similarly to maybe the helmet where we just folded valley folds to make this detail, we can do something similar. So since we have an edge right here, I'm just going to fold in some valley folds, and it'll kind of be like diagonal pleats, kind of like this. So it's a very thin valley fold, and it makes it look like there's pleats, kind of like this. And we're going to do it on both sides. And this will also make the wrist guard look a little bit thinner because we want our wrist to be thinner than the rest of our arm, as is normally the case. So something like that. Alright, so now that we have that small detail in, we want to kind of figure out where our elbow is going to be. And so we kind of want to base this off the proportion of the rest of our model, but generally it's, around the middle. If you study a little bit more anatomy, maybe you know the exact proportion of where the elbow should be. But we're going to say right around here, like right above this little pleat line. And actually, to be honest, we can just use where we made these folds right here to make the pleat for the elbow. And one way you could do this elbow is just a sequence of pleats. So I'm just going to crease in here for our reference, and make a small pleat like this. And this is more of a guard. So the wrist guard overhangs the elbow, and I guess you can kind of study some medieval armors to see if it's more the case that the wrist guard protects the elbow coming on top, or if it's the other way around, or if you want to just change it up based on upon your style, you can go for that too. But from here, now that we have basically this joint like this, what I like to do to make it look even more like a joint is to just swivel down the corners so that it's not like a square pleat like this. So I don't really like to pre-crease it, but I kind of just mountain fold at an angle, and then just let the rest of the paper kind of swivel into place. I guess it's kind of a reverse fold in a way, like that. And we're going to do that same thing on the other side. And the other side is obviously going to be a little bit thicker. And we actually have a cool shape right here where some of the layers didn't actually reverse fold, which is totally fine. Again, you can, a lot of times when I shape, I'll make decisions just on the fly. So we're going to make this decision to just leave that there. And then from here, we want the shape of a wrist. So naturally, we have it going to a point kind of like this. So that's where we want it to be a little bit thinner. And for now, I don't really need to make any hard creases, but I'm just going to make some curving folds, kind of like this, so I can visualize what the hand will look like as we thin it out. And it's going to be something like this, where this top part will be the top of that wrist guard. Right, so it'll be thinned out kind of like this. We'll have our hand splayed out here, and then we have our pleats here. So all this will want to be one piece. We want it to be strong, and then the rest will be the other parts of the armor. Now, a couple of things you can do is this can either be the outside of the elbow or the inside of the elbow. So if I could turn the arm this way, kind of like this, then it would be the outside of the elbow. But if I wanted to do a different pose, then I could also have it the inside of the elbow. So as you can see here, I have a pose where the hand is outstretched like this, and in this case it is the inside of the elbow that has the details on it. However, I don't exactly want to shape it like the first one, so we're going to make it the outside of the elbow, and later on I'm going to choose what I actually want to shape it like. This decision might change, but since we haven't really done anything that is 100% complete, we can change it with our own will. And then basically the top part here will become the rest of our arm, and basically what we can do to block it out is right where the pleat is. I'm gonna open up some of the pleats that don't really interrupt anything and make kind of a valley fold impression like this, like that, on both sides. And that's kind of to score the three-dimensionality part of the arm, and as well as to also help kind of lock that pleat into place so the paper memory doesn't forget it's there. And so as you can see, it doesn't really look like anything right now, but as we work on it more and more, it will slowly curve out and turn into our arm.
But that is kind of the details for the arm. We'll worry about our pose when I talk about the final shaping. And maybe we'll use this arm as our example for the final shaping. But as you can see, it'll kind of be like this, just if it was to be very static. And then as for the other arm, we kind of have that in place. So basically what my decision-making process will be, I'm going to figure out what to do with this arm when I figure out what I want to do with this arm. So if it's in a striking pose, maybe this arm will be reaching over to help guard, or it'll be like a two-handed kind of deal. But we'll see. We'll see what we want to do. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this arm. If you want to add more details, there is paper to do so. You can either do more pleats, you can have all the units if you'd like, and you can do, there's some tricks you can do to get really small little spikes. You can stretch out these spread squashes differently to get different pleat designs. A whole lot you can do. So have fun with that, and definitely try some things out. But that is going to be all for the arm as of now. Actually, I guess we can just talk about the hand a little bit. And again, this will generally differ based on what kind of positioning you can be. But one of these is going to be the pinky, and the other will be the thumb, right? And if you notice the orientation of my hand, you just want to kind of match this pattern. So the thumb will be a little bit more sunken in, and the other four fingers along with the pinky are more aligned, right? And so depending on what you're going for, that is what you want to achieve when you do the hand. Obviously it's a little bit hard with paper, but here you can see this one is the thumb, a little bit shorter than the other three here, and then also the pinky is short, but it's within the palm on here. And so that's just kind of what helps you do hands. Hands are pretty difficult, so definitely spend a lot of time there. But in terms of actually folding, there's a lot of flexibility. You basically just splay out these layers side by side. It's pretty easy to manipulate. So even, you know, like that, obviously you don't want to keep it like this. Just do some small mountains and valleys to kind of spread these out to how you think looks good. But yeah. Alright, so now let's jump onto the legs really quick. And first of all, the pivot point we want our legs actually rides up pretty high. So even though our transition unit is right here, because our torso is too long, we can actually use the space we talked about earlier, where we're actually trying to push this up to canter our legs basically outwards. So depending on how you want to pose your legs, you can just try to push them up as high as possible. That looks generally okay for this part of the model, which again should at least go up about a unit, kind of like this. And you can kind of see that in this one. The legs are not as high as I'd like them to be here, but you can kind of tell they're pushed up. But let's talk about a little bit more about how to actually fold these legs. So how do we turn these into what I have there? And what I like to do is use the diamonds we have here kind of as details and also as kind of references. So at least for the foot, we can use the very bottom diamond, and right even with this top flap here, we can use that as our reference. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to valley fold up along this diamond here, and this leg is the thicker leg, don't forget, than this one. So it's going to feel a little bit different as we do this, but we have that right there, and then we're going to use our diamond on top and make some mountain folds along this diamond using the edges as reference. So just like this. And when we do that, we can see that it creates a crimp, kind of like that. And that is a very basic way to do the feet. And then say for the shoes, what I like to do from here is I don't like it to be too pointy. So like our ankle starts here basically. So if we pinch along the sides where we just made this crimp, let me find the best angle to show it. We have basically this corner which we can really kind of crease on to kind of set it. And I'm not folding it flat by any means, but I'm definitely placing a crease along that line, and it gets it to sit there a little bit better than it would naturally. But if you want to, you technically could just actually fold a corner in to also keep it in place. But that, at least, it can be how we can start this foot, is with that crease. And as you can see, it also thins out our actual like shoe or our boot here. And yeah, normally I don't have the boots pointy, or it's not. You can't. I guess I'm looking at my other one and it's pointy. But ideally, you can maybe do something like shape this up into a point. You know, kind of stylize it a little bit. Just add some details. Looks like I was a little bit too lazy on my other fold, but you know, you can do something like this. Kind of whatever you think would look good, but let's start with this for now and just not worry too much about it until later, because again, we're gonna want to add some final details to really make it look good. Next, we need the knee. So right here, we basically have the calf, and our calf armor will be basically this diamond, and it might ride up a little bit. But what I like to do is I try to have at least this part kind of represent the calf armor, and it looks like in this case we're not quite going to be able to do that, but we should be able to make our knee right about here. So let me think about this actually really quick. I think that's wrong. So if our leg puts out here, then probably our knee will be about here. Okay, just kidding. We're using this one as our knee. So our knee joint will be this diamond right here. And so for now, we actually have a nice reference right here. And we can just fold along this. Like that. And that's going to start our reference. And I'm actually going to make another crease, very small, that's just right around the top here. And basically, you know, very small, or I guess if we want to base off references, we're going to bring this point up into the old crease right there. And that is going to help us get a knee pad, kind of like this, right? Just like that. So then we have some space for if we bend our knees. But what I like to do here is start to get the shape of the thigh. And let's flip this over. So we can see we made our pleat right here. And something easy you can do is start by just valley folding the corner. And actually, if the paper's thick enough, you can see the valley fold is pushing more of the paper up than would be like a 45 degree. And that actually is what helps us get our thigh shape. So we're going to do that on both sides, and I'm going to show you the front, and you can kind of see what effect that has. And then on yours, you can adjust your positioning on this as follows. Again, there's not really references for these, but if I flip it around, you can kind of see how it softens that angle a little bit and adds some dimension. So now we start to have a thigh shape here, like that. Obviously, it doesn't look correct right now because our calves are the same thickness as our thighs, and we don't want that. And so that's where this next part comes in. And let me show an example of what we are about to do. That's like a good example. So yeah, let me grab that really quick. All right, so we're actually using the Dragon Slayer as our example instead of the Dragon Knight. But the legs are pretty much the same. But here I did a pretty good job at shaping this one out. Let me get the angle correct so you guys can see. There you go. So what you can see is I just used some round creasing, not like full-on folds, to both give dimensionality to the foot as well as give it form and shape. So we have our shin guard here, and this is a very traditional looking shin guard, I guess, shape into the knee joint and then up into the thigh. And now this is Wenjo paper, so you know it's kind of like magical shaping paper, so it holds very nicely like this. But in order to get the same effect on, say, Hanji, what I recommend is to glue the layers here so that they're very strong together and pliable, almost like a foil paper. And then you can shape in these kind of shapes, forms, whatever you'd like to call it in, and they'll hold. So I know the lighting with the white paper is really reflective right now, but hopefully you guys can tell what I mean. But definitely check out the photo of this to kind of look at the legs, and you should understand what I mean there. But yeah. Alright, so kind of the gluing, I guess, will be in more of the final shaping, but if you'd like to do that beforehand, if you don't mind doing that, definitely go for it. But I'll show it without the gluing, in case there's some people who are a little worried or have never done that before. But yeah, basically with this leg, what we can do is kind of visualize, alright, here's our knee, here's our shin guard, and it's almost like sketching out the shape of the shin guard using some creases. So I'm going to start from the bottom and crease upwards, kind of like that, right? And then as we approach the knee, I'm just going to change shape a little bit. And if you look at calves, right, a muscular calf, it kind of has the muscle going out, and then you have our knee joint here, and the knee joint itself has a small, I guess, bulge. So we'll kind of shape that in just using some depressions with my finger, kind of like this. And then at least with this paper, you can maybe score it with your fingernail a little bit to get it into place. But this is like the starting shape of our calf here, kind of like this. And then as you can see, it thins it out on that side, and then we also have that pleat that really forms our knee. Let's do the same on the opposite side. So same kind of thing. Now we're just kind of mirroring it on this side a little bit, get the shape of the calf guard, and then write it up where you think like the muscles are, and then when you get to the knee section, where the knee would be here. And then to really refine that there's a knee right here, what I like to do is sometimes I'll put in a small pleat like right around here to really define the knee. Sometimes it's not necessary, sometimes it is. I think here I will, just so it doesn't look too smooth, but you can kind of see just the general shape of the leg right here is looking pretty decent. Right, we kind of have all the components of the leg. We have the thigh, we have the knee, and we have the calf. And so what I'll do right here actually is put in that knee joint. And since we don't want to shorten our leg too long, we're going to make this pleat extremely tiny, and mostly just in the middle. And then we're going to use the kind of folds that we put along the side to match it in. So I'm going to fold in like this a little bit, and then make a very small pleat that I can with my fingernail, just along the middle. Get that knee pad kind of shape. And then folding along the sketch that I kind of had for the calf on both sides, like this. And I'm going really fast, so for yours, if you're doing this, feel free to take your time so you can get everything looking nice and clean. If you make too many folds, you know, the creases stay, so sometimes they won't look as clean if you fold it over a lot, many times. But there we kind of have our leg and our knee cap, which let's get the lighting to be a little bit more preference. So like that, kind of. Just like that. Pretty nice. Looking pretty good. And actually, even without using glue, I think the leg turned out pretty nicely. But yeah, so that is kind of the construction of the leg, and I'm going to add a little foot detail here. I don't really know what I want this shoe to look like, but if you can find a medieval boot and maybe use some of the extra paper as detail, or just fold it in, you know, maybe that looks too much like a, I don't know, like a wizard's sandal or something like that. I don't really know. But that's what you have there. As for the thigh, we have, again, paper in the back here, which we can kind of do the same thing in pulling some layers and then doing a valley fold like this to kind of puff it out a little bit and get some extra form, and also locking in the pleat kind of like this. Doesn't have to be anything too crazy, right? Just a little bit of roundness, and over time that will help make it look better from the side profile here. But if not, you can just curve it, make sure that thigh is solid. We aren't actually posing it yet, but that's kind of what it'll be like. Yeah. So let's kind of get the other one. I'll do the other one off camera, and then once we have both done, we can kind of talk about how we would like to pose our legs. All right, so we have finished both legs, and I added just a small detail where I valley folded kind of these free corners just in on both sides. And I think it's a nice little detail. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but the option is there. But yeah, we have both legs done, kind of like this. None of them have been glued yet. And so thankfully the paper allows us to hold that shape like that. However, if for the case that you're traveling or over time, your folds may weaken and they might come out. So if you would like, this is where you could use glue to reinforce what you have already done. Or if you wanted to use it before to get crisper, cleaner folds, you can do so, but we'll talk about that later in the final shaping. But for now, let's decide to pose. And actually, when I say final shaping, we're kind of I guess transitioning into the final shaping. So we are really at some of the last details here. Our model kind of looks like this right now. And I guess we can start off with this part in the middle. So this is our battle dress part. I don't really know what the actual piece would be called in terms of armor, but it is this section. And as you can see here, I have just basically splayed out the layers and kind of curled it in the middle to kind of get this, I guess, you know, a little bit older feeling, kind of like a cloth or a leather feeling. So all you really have to do here is we have basically two flaps right here. You just bring them to the middle, bring the next to the middle, and keep going like that with each pair. Like this, and this one. And it'll start to billow in the top a little bit because of the thickness, but you can already kind of see it's looking like a fan. And if you've ever made like an accordion fan, maybe from like a napkin, this is basically the same principle where you just have a bunch of pleats that are forward and back like this, and then you kind of just push them out into a fan. And let me not go out of frame, you know, kind of like that. Just splay them out a little bit. And the thing you can really do here is the two connecting ones right here. You can fold a lock into these two here, and this is a little bit hard to do, but let's just try valley folding first right here, just a 45 degree. And this might be kind of hard to show, but if you know a better technique to just like lock two edges together, definitely use that. But I'm basically just gonna fold in a rabbit ear right here. It's not a great lock by any means, but it will help trap this paper. And you guys definitely cannot see what's going on, but I'm folding just this tiny little rabbit ear right here between these two flaps to connect them in the middle. And then you can kind of shape it out from here. And yeah, so yeah, again, you can kind of fidget around with this section right here, just however you would like to get it looking however you like. And it looks like my lock was really bad because it didn't even hold. but you kind of get the point with that. And then as for the legs, let's kind of push this section up a little bit. And I'm actually going to be very forceful now that our legs are pretty much done. Like this. And then right around here we have our joints. I'm going to almost do like kind of like a reverse fold. But we're not going to really fold the whole flap in half. But kind of right in here, I'm reverse folding it up a little bit. With this section here. And what gets thick back here is all these pleats. Sometimes they can help you do this maneuver, sometimes they just get really thick. But I'm going to put one leg kind of like that, and we're not really posing him yet. I'm just kind of getting it out a little bit so he's not standing straight up. And then from there we can kind of visualize a little bit more clearly what it could like when it's posed. And the model might be a little bit hard to hold while you're doing this. So as you can see, I'm basically between the mouth here. This is kind of the safest place to maneuver the paper while we do so. Like reverse fold this guy, so right here, just like out a little bit, press down. In the back here, just kind of crimp with this one, crimp this up like that. And what's going on in the back here, this doesn't really matter because we have these outside flaps here that basically kind of cover up anything that's going on in the back. These are our little back dress kind of detail here. So those you can kind of leave them however you'd like. So we won't really worry about that too much. We're more just kind of fidgeting with the paper to get it to obey our command. And you don't really want to try to mush this. I know right here I kind of am doing some mushing, but if there's some other folds you can do to kind of get things out of the way. So like for instance, along the bottom here, I just put in a reverse fold. So it's like a clean mush to kind of position it. And then at the top here, just really pinch it. And pinch right here. And this may take some time. So yeah, depending on how yours is going, kind of fidget with it, get it to how you would like. And even as is right here, just that little bit of fidgeting has kind of splayed my legs out a little bit. It's in a little bit of a pose just because I already had some knee bend going on. And let's just ignore the battle dress for now. I guess this will be something later on that we'll just have to keep kind of fidgeting with as we move other things. But that's kind of the fun of shaping. You get to play around with the paper to see how it reacts and how you like it looking and all that sorts of stuff. But yeah, so this I'm just going to leave kind of in here. But we're looking okay as for the legs. Like not too bad going on here. Yeah, this is looking totally fine. At least for now. Right. Okay, so that kind of does it for the legs. Again, what I'll do basically after we talk about the arms a little bit is I am going to glue shape half of the model and then you can compare it to a completely unglued other half of the model and kind of see what we're working with, and kind of reason why you might want to use glue, even if you don't like glue or if you don't agree with glue. There really is no problem using it, but yeah, just that's a topic for another day. But I advise you to at least experiment with it to just make a very beautiful end result. All right, let's think about the arms now. So let's talk again. We were kind of mentioning this arm on what to do here, and actually, so I'm not too sure what we should do, but some options if you really don't know what to do is, again, if you glue some of the layers together to make it a little bit more stiff, it'll hold in positions, kind of like what we did for the legs, so you can kind of sketch out what you would like to see for your model. And the other thing you could do, depending on the paper, which this one you have to be a lot more careful with, is you can actually stick a wire in the very middle of a bunch of these flaps, and what that does is it will help you position the arm, and it'll stay without you having to like wait for it to dry or anything, and then you can change the position over and over to kind of get something that you really like. So that is something you also can do for this final shaping portion, at least for the arm pose. And I think that's what I'm going to do in order to kind of showcase how to pose the arm, just because it's a little bit faster. It's not a necessary thing, but it's a decent technique you can use to kind of visualize stuff. Because if I just displayed it like this doesn't look very good compared to like this guy, right? But yeah, that's kind of what we'll do for the arms. I guess that wasn't really much discussion on what to do with the arms here, but hopefully I can inspire you guys if I can show you a pose I think about. But the process I'm going to basically be using is looking just at single-handed sword poses and kind of going from there, trying to mimic them with what I think is possible. As for the helmet, we kind of already talked about that in the helmet shaping portion, but again, I'm going to shape half of it with glue, and you'll see the difference kind of between the two sides. But yeah, other than that, just try to make it look nice, and we will come back when this is partly shaped. All right, so I have completed the right side of the shaping, and the left side is not complete. So the left side, as you can see, is still pretty open. Everything's folded and flimsy, no glue at all. But you know, I mean, it's shaped-ish. However, the right side is more fully shaped using glue, and it was kind of weird to do with the head, so it's not really all done. Ideally, the head will probably tilt this way, but that's only possible when I shape the left side. But at least for the form of it, like we have the horns done, we have the mask part done, and same with the dragon head here. You can see the teeth are very thin compared to the left side. And then we're going for a certain pose here, which you'll see when the entire model is complete. I mean, it kind of isn't a pose right now, but a little bit better of a pose, which is why the leg is so bent like this. It's going to be an aerial pose. But kind of what I mentioned before is this is how you would curve it out to make it three-dimensional. Bend the leg. I mentioned also you could use some wire to shape it. However, I actually realized I don't have any wire on me, so I didn't use wire. So this guy, I guess, shows, you know, you don't need wire. It just takes a little bit more time. Here's our arm positioning. Again, the pose will kind of make sense later on, but it's kind of just an action pose. We got the hand done. We have the wrist guard. Let's try to get in focus. Wrist guard. We just used some crimps to thin the arm and bend it. But yeah, so that's, I guess, the difference between doing the final shaping compared to just folding the model. So I highly recommend you do that. And if you're curious what glue I used to shape, that is linked in the description. right here we have our battle dress skirt thing. That will also go a little bit more this way when we're done, but you can kind of see the concept of this. I didn't need any glue really here. I just curled it, carefully. But yeah, so hopefully that gives you guys some idea of kind of what to do a little bit. And how you to try and kind of choose your poses, how to use different shaping techniques, or just kind of some vision into maybe starting to use glue for shaping. Because especially with this model, it makes it look, it helps a lot, for sure. But yeah, so I guess we just have this left side, which I will finish the shaping and then I will show again just to kind of final talk over. But yeah, hopefully that maybe convinces you guys a little bit to try it out and to play around with different poses. You don't have to do the exact same pose I did here, but if you really have no idea, definitely use this and the finished version of this as reference. And then of course you can use the original as reference as well, because that's a pretty cool pose as well. But yeah, let's finish up the left side. And for reference, the right side took me about 3 hours to do. I was pretty slow, but I like to take my own time. So that's a little estimate for you guys. It probably will take me about 2 hours for the right side, just because some things are already set. But yeah, we'll be right back. Hey friends, we are back, and after another like 3 to 4 hours, I have finished the entire Dragon Knight. And here it is. Hope you guys can see that pretty clearly. So I finished off the shaping with glue on the sword arm side, and I think it is evident that there's quite a difference between that and the unfinished shaping. So if you have more questions about, or more confusions about, the difference, hopefully that is kind of the telltale for you guys, and hopefully encourages you to try out maybe some wet shaping with some glue to get quite a stunning result. Over here I went for like an action mid-air pose, so a little bit different than I normally do, and I think it's pretty cool. Basically I just googled like one-hand sword anime poses, and you get a whole bunch of results, and I kind of just chose a pose and tried to model the origami after it. So I think it's fairly successful and pretty unique. And so I'll give a little bit of a twirl so you guys can kind of see everything together. We finish off the hand on that side as well, just some extra final shaping. We fanned out both sides of the battle dress. Both sides of the chest armor are complete. Here you can see our fingers pretty clearly. Underneath, they're gripping the sword. The mask, it's cohesive. The horns are all pointed. The helmet is like faced down. And then, of course, I have this awesome action figure display stand to hold the model, which again, these are also linked below in the description if you'd like to get some. They're super useful. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. That is pretty much all for the tutorial. I'll just kind of show off the back to show what I did with the back of the battle dress, and then you can see it's basically closed back on that side, and some of the leg shaping, how it's rounded. It took a lot of time to really nail out some of these details, but I think it works pretty well. But let's kind of display this one next to the original. Excuse my arm there. And hopefully that gives you guys some kind of inspiration on what to go for the shaping of your Dragon Knight. But there you go. Pretty neat model, I think. Let me know if you guys fold it. Definitely tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see it. It's not a terribly hard origami, but it's also definitely not the easiest to fold and to shape. So if you made it all this way, definitely congrats for making it. Thank you so much for folding it. It means a whole lot to me for people to fold my designs. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial series. I think this is the longest
single piece tutorial I've made so far. 8 parts, just about in, quarter of an hour long each. But yeah, really happy with this tutorial being complete, and don't forget, feel free to ask questions in the comments below. Share this tutorial. It's put in its own playlist, so maybe you can save it. Drop a like, and that helps out the channel if you really want me to continue to make tutorials such as this one, and just to support the origami. And lastly, if you want to support this channel a little bit more and also maybe get some bonus content, feel free to check out the YouTube memberships options, and that is another way to directly support this channel. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I hope you really enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
All this origami, all this origami, all this origami got me going kamikaze now.